The last class of chordates and the last class of animals is class Mammalia, the mammals. They have well-developed cerebral cortex, which allows them to do logistics. Females feed their young milk through mammary glands. They're covered with fur or thick skin to keep them warm because they're warm-blooded. They have a constant body temperature. Both sexes in some species care for the young, and young are imprinted with different learnings, lessons and things by watching the parents hunt or evade or things like that. Mammals have different types of teeth. You can identify a skull from a mammal in Kentucky based on the number and types of teeth that it has in its jaws. Incisors are thin, snipping teeth that cut and snip, and we have some in our front of our mouth, both in the upper and lower jaws, that help. But herbivores have these incisors. One group in particular has a very large incisors, and these are the rodents, squirrels, beaver, muskrat, chipmunks. They all have incisors in the front of their jaws that are larger, that allow them to cut, snip food. Canines are the piercing fang-like teeth. They're prominent in carnivores that pierce and hold on to their prey. Premolars and molars are in the back of the jaw, and they are primarily used to grind and crush and tear food. Again, herbivores are have a lot of molars and premolars, but carnivores do too, because once they have caught their prey, they do have to grind and tear their food into digestible pieces. So mammals, like I said, give birth to young, and they feed them with mammary glands. But there are two mammals that actually lay eggs, and then those young, when they hatch, then they are fed through mammary glands. And the two mammals that are egg layers are called the echidna. It's a spiny anteater found in New Zealand. And then the duck-billed platypus, which is a mammal found in southern Australia and Tasmania. The duck-billed platypus even has a spur on the end of its back legs that has a toxic gland, and so when they spike their in defense, they actually can envenomate a person if, for instance, the person was trying to catch it. So these two mammals are called monotremes. Monotremes are egg-laying mammals. All right. If you know one of these, that is good, because that might come up again later. Class marsupial. Class Mammalia, family marsupial. Marsupials are pouched animals. They birth their young very early in development, and then they finish their development within a pouch. When we think of marsupials, we usually think of Australia and things like the wombat, the koala, and the kangaroo, red kangaroo in that picture. But in Kentucky, we do have one marsupial, and that's the Virginia opossum. Very common. The rest of the mammals are placentals. They have a placenta that is used to help with allowing the embryo to develop into a fetus that then will develop into a young mammal. And so bats, it's like bats, cats, and rats, lions and tigers and bears, oh my. So things like bats and weasels, like minks and skunks, and then there's cats, like bobcats, and the mountain lion. The black bear is making its way back into Kentucky and establishing itself. We don't have seals, of course, because we don't have an ocean, but seals and whales would fall into this group. We have a state mammal. It is the gray squirrel. I've got a picture of a fox squirrel here, but gray squirrels are the state squirrel. And then, of course, Homo sapiens is you. That's you're a mammal. Before we say goodbye, I do have another joke. So a senior at a college decides that he wants to take a class that is an easy A. He's had some tough courses in the first semester, and he just wants to finish out with an easy A. And his roommate took ornithology, study of birds, the semester before, and he was like, it's an easy A. We just sat around, listened to bird calls. It was just the easiest A I've ever gotten. And he said, that sounds like what I need. I'll sign up for that. Well, what he didn't know is the professor the first semester retired, and they hired a new professor right out of grad school, and he was bounded to show everybody that he was the best teacher and the best scientist out there. And so when they started the class, they would meet at 4:30 a.m. every morning, and they would be out in the woods, and they would have to identify birds by their calls, and the tests were just extremely tough, and this guy just worked just to stay passing in this class. So it came to the final, and so the guy was just sitting there, and the whole semester just started getting on his nerves, and how bad a class it was, how hard it was. It really didn't need to be that hard, and so as they sat down for the final, he was in bad mood to begin with, and the professor came in, and there were all these bird feet up at the front of the classroom. And for the final, the class was supposed to identify each bird by their feet. And so he sat there. He was already angry to begin with, and he started getting madder and madder and madder. And so he decided to he just couldn't take it anymore. So he marched up to the front of the classroom. He threw the test paper at the professor, and he said, "You are the most the worst teacher I've ever had. This is the worst class I've ever had. It's just impossible. It's too hard. All this." And the professor said, "Sir, what is your name?" And he said, You tell me. Ha ha ha.